At Hacienda Sur, we're handcrafting beef with a level of care and attention that is completely different from the beef industry's mass production of meat. We start with careful breeding, using only the best genetics from around the world, including Japanese Wagyu, the breed best known for Kobe beef. We then raise our animals in a pristine, natural environment without hormones, antibiotics, herbicides, pesticides, or inorganic fertilizers. Finally, we age the meat according to almost forgotten traditional methods in our custom-built dry aging facility for 45 days. Dry aging not only tenderizes the meat, but also concentrates the beef flavors for an exceptional taste. It requires almost 4 years of careful planning and hard work to craft one of our steaks, from breeding selection all the way through the completion of the dry aging process. The result is an exquisitely flavorful and succulent piece of natural beef that is completely different from anything else that's available in Costa Rica. I'm Lori Greiner, and this is Hacienda Sur, our farm in Arita, Costa Rica on the Pacific coast. Here at Hacienda Sur, we've been raising cattle for 36 years, but we've been doing things a little bit differently than everybody else for the last 5 years or so. I became involved with the company, and for me, it became a question of, if we're going to produce beef, let's make it the best beef that we possibly can. It was clear to me that the market was changing. People wanted to know where their food was coming from, how it was raised, and more importantly, they wanted to be sure that their food was being raised cleanly, without chemicals or poisons, pesticides, and herbicides. We've never ever used hormones with our animals. Some people use hormones to get the cows to come into heat at the same time. Others use hormones to make the animals grow bigger and faster. We don't believe in that. We want to raise beef as naturally as we possibly can. In an environment like this, it's really great for cattle because it's as pristine and natural as they can hope for. They've got an abundance of grass, and they also have lots of shade. We have shaded lanes throughout the farm, which is very important for cattle. After grazing in the morning, they need time to rest in the shade and digest and ruminate. One of the things that's always disturbed me about the beef industry is that the term conventional beef refers to beef from cattle that are raised in feedlots in very crowded, unsanitary conditions. Cattle are ruminating animals. They evolved to eat grass and green forages, and they were meant to roam in open spaces. So here at Hacienda Sur, we really work hard to keep the animals in the most pristine environment that we can provide for them. They're born and raised in the pasture. They spend their entire life in the pasture. We started with Brahma cattle like everybody else because, you know, the Brahma really thrive in the hot tropical climates. But the Brahma are not known for having tender meat. So about 15 years ago, we decided that we were going to try and create some beef in Costa Rica with some exceptional meat qualities. So we began by importing Red Angus genetics from a ranch in Montana that is well known and famous for its Red Angus. And we began crossing that with the Brahma cows. And the result was really spectacular. We've got some other cows from this cross that were just really well framed, very fertile, excellent mothers, very curious, very calm. And that dramatically improved the meat quality in our herd. And then approximately 5 years ago, we had an opportunity to take that to the next level. We imported genetics from Japanese Wagyu, which are famous for Kobe beef. We were able to bring in 4 different bloodlines, and we began crossing our Red Angus Brahma mother cows with the Japanese Wagyu. And the result are these animals here. And these are the animals that have been selected for our artisan beef program. And what we're aiming for here is a dramatic increase in the tenderness and the juiciness and the flavor of the meat, which we get from the Wagyu genetics. We keep these animals in an intensive pasture rotation where they move to fresh grass every day. This allows them to get the highest quality feed that we can possibly give them. And also it helps the pastures be more productive, because when you overgraze or undergraze pastures, you either lose nutritional value or you have problems with weeds. We took the difficult decision almost 5 years ago to totally eliminate all herbicides and pesticides here at Hacienda Sur. We were initially concerned that we would have a terrible problem with weeds, but by using an intensive grazing rotation, we keep the grass at its absolute most productive stage of development, and it outcompetes the weeds. So we've eliminated a problem with weeds here without the use of chemicals. At Hacienda Sur, we have approximately 60 kilometers of electric fence wire, which we use to really manage and get a lot more productivity out of our grasses. We move the animals every day to a fresh paddock and don't let them overgraze or undergraze a particular section of grass. You can see these animals have been working this small paddock right here. Tomorrow, they'll move over here to this grass, which is, obviously lush, high, really deep, and ready for the cattle. When I was a young kid, my father was one of the first to introduce one of the brachiaria grasses, the Brisanta Toledo, to Costa Rica. It was originally an African grass, and you can see it's a very robust grass. This grass will be ready for the cattle tomorrow. It's already above my waist. This particular grass has really made a big difference in our productivity here at the farm. A misconception about raising cattle in the tropics is that the environment is so lush it should be a very simple matter of producing all the grass that you want year-round for the cattle. But that's actually very much not the case. In the tropics, we have a pretty severe dry season, which the grass at that time loses its nutritional value and the cattle will suffer. A lot of other farmers, they will feed their animals waste from the orange industry, the tops from pineapples, anything they can find to keep their cattle alive. And it's a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. We do things a little bit differently here at Hacienda Sur. We've developed quite an extensive farming capability. We're able to grow all of our own green forages and green feeds that we can supplement the cattle with at times of the year when the nutritional value in the pastures goes down. We've invested quite heavily in a very advanced irrigation system that allows us to grow green forages year-round if we want to. One of the most important things about raising cattle in a healthy, natural way is to eliminate as much stress as you possibly can in the animals. They need comfortable places to ruminate and digest their grasses, but any stress at all will cause cattle to purge their feed and they can lose a day or two's worth of grazing. And we try and eliminate stress on many, many different levels. One thing that we do is we separate the mother cows and their calves from all of the other males that we're raising. Cows and calves have their own farms, their own pastures. When you eliminate the stress, the cattle will produce much more weight gain. They're healthier, they have fewer parasite problems, and the end result is obviously a better piece of meat. We're here at our northernmost farm in Guayabo de Bagaces, which occupies a big chunk of the saddle between the Miravales volcano and the Rincon de la Vieja. Here between the volcanoes, we're up at a higher altitude, and the climate is more favorable for our European breeds and the Japanese Wagyu breeds. Here we have our mother cows and calves at this farm, and we select the best of the best to send to Hacienda Sur for our artisan beef program. My father used to sit in the truck and watch cattle for hours on end out in the pasture, and I used to think that he was just thinking about all the other complications in his life, but he was actually studying the animals. And it turns out that, you know, cattle have very complex social groups and hierarchies and behavior patterns, and they evolved to roam open places and graze on green forages. I've been asked why we haven't applied for organic certification, and the main reason is because I think organic means one thing to consumers and another thing to producers, and there's some problems with organic, and that is especially the case with beef. For example, with organic, it's still possible to use pesticides, organic pesticides, which are largely untested. And it's also possible to raise organic beef in confined feedlots. Very unsanitary conditions, not really the best way to produce beef in our opinion. So we're just pursuing our own route on the sustainability, and we're trying to communicate to consumers our philosophies, our protocols, and how we think clean, healthy beef should be produced. One important thing that we did was invite the Tropical Grazing Institute to set up a research center here on the farm, because their objectives are perfectly aligned with our own.
Hi, my name is Art Vendersteen. I'm founding director of the Tropical Grazing Institute, which is a non-profit research center based here in Parita, Costa Rica. Hacienda Sur made a space available for us to do our research, and our research focuses on improving all natural green practices to improve farming conditions in the tropics. As you can see, we have a weather station here where we monitor the conditions, the pastures, rotational grazing is there. I mean, people think of the tropics, everything grows, and it does, as so do weeds. So that's one of our things we're working on, to come up with a replacement for 2,4-D, which is a really big problem in agricultural industry. Tropical Grazing Institute aims to find ways to do farming completely without chemicals. That's why TGI exists, and yes, it's not easy, but we're working on it, and Juan Bernardo, our research director, is doing a great job to come up with new ways to improve practices.
Well, like Mr. Art says, we are developing successful projects right now in Hacienda Sur. We improve our grazing by the implementation of a rotational program that help us with improve our soil, quality of our soil, the grass, and also the amount per hectare per year of meat. Also, we are working with some forage that help us improve our quality of the diet here, like Stylosanthis, also sorghum. Another thing we are doing is join some weather data with our data in production to have some conclusions and that help us to improve our system.
So we're doing the work here on the farm itself, but the idea of TGI is to expand, to grow.
Yes, sir. For example, we are working with the University of Costa Rica that help us developing right now some projects here in Hacienda Sur.
Yes, and then the idea is to share our knowledge on what works, what doesn't work, our findings here, and the end objective of Tropical Grazing Institute is the people, planet, profit idea. We want a better environment, not just for people, but for the animals, so we can share our knowledge to big or small, home or abroad. That's what TGI is about.
Traceability is becoming a very important issue in the food industry. People want to know and need to know exactly where their animals came from and complete history of of everything that's happened to those animals. Here at Hacienda Sur, we've maintained an extremely comprehensive database for the better part of 25 years. And we've digitized that, all of our farm managers, every daily activity that's recorded, they do it on their cell phone and it's immediately captured in our database. And the result of all that is if you want to know what a particular animal was doing when it was 11 months old, we can tell you which pasture it was in. We can tell you everything about its lineage, its parents. We can tell you how much it weighed when it was born, how much he weighed when he was weaned, his entire growth profile, and all medical history that would be involved with the cattle. And this is very important because a lot of beef ends up on the plate with medications and pharmaceuticals that haven't had time to clear the system yet. We've always maintained extremely strict protocols. And in our artisan beef program, those protocols are even stricter. When we were first developing our artisan beef program, the number one criteria, aside from producing a great piece of meat, was we wanted to be able to make sure and guarantee to the public that this beef had never, ever had any contact whatsoever with antibiotics or hormones. So if it's ever necessary to save an animal's life with a treatment of antibiotic, that animal is removed from our artisan beef program and will never make it to the plate under the Hacienda Sur name. When we cut steaks, we vacuum seal them almost immediately, so there's very little exposure of the meat to air. And as a result, when I open this pack, this meat, which looks a little bit dark right now, is going to turn red. Okay, so we'll let that sit there for a while. It's taken us 4 years of careful planning and hard work to make these steaks, beginning with our breed planning and going all the way through the pregnancy, the birth, the raising the animal, and finally through the dry aging process to really handcraft and produce a steak that's absolutely completely different from what you can find in the grocery store. Wagyu cattle are very unique among all the cattle breeds in a couple respects. One is they have the highest genetic propensity to produce intramuscular fat, which is what we ordinarily call marbling. And marbling is what gives beef its tenderness and its flavor. But with Wagyu, there's some very interesting properties about this marbling or this fat that we encounter in the meat. Wagyu cattle have the highest ratio of good fat to bad fat of any of the cattle breeds. And they also have an exceptionally or extraordinarily high ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. In other words, it's a healthy fat. So healthy, in fact, that some people refer to Wagyu beef as the olive oil of animal fats. You know, we kept the ugliest steaks for ourselves, so these aren't the best things that we have. This side is the ribeyes, the cowboy steaks, and over here we have the Kansas City, or the strip loins, or the New York strip. Well, cheers.